I know. That's why we're all here. Donald Trump. Yeah, it's good.
We are expecting one more legislator, but to be respectful of everyone's Saturday time, we're going to go ahead and get started. And we'll welcome her in when we get. But good morning, welcome to the main library. I heard some of you say you haven't been here in years, so welcome back. And this is your first time, welcome. Thank you for joining this legislative coffee presented by our friends with the League of Women Voters of Johnson County and the Kansas City, Kansas Public Library. My name is Laura Lovelace. I'm the manager here at the main library, and I'm happy to have you here. This morning, we will hear from a selection of representatives covering Wyandotte County. We have Representative Pam Curtis, Representative Luis Ruiz, and Representative Melissa Orpezo. Joining us from the Democratic breakfast this morning will be Representative Dr. Valdinia Nguyen. She'll be here momentarily. We'll go ahead and get started. I would just like to note that all of our Wyandotte County legislators were invited to participate, but due to some previous obligations, not everyone could. We are very appreciative of the legislators who do spend their Saturday time coming to talk to us, so we're very appreciative of that. A few housekeeping things. This is an educational and nonpartisan event for the general public. Legislators will each have an opportunity for a 3-minute opening statement, and each will have time to answer questions during the question and answer session. If you have a question, you may put it on the card on your seat. We have extra cards here. If you're attending by Zoom, you can submit your question through the chat, and that will be relayed to us. This discussion is being recorded over Zoom. We will post this recording to our YouTube channel for both the League of Women Voters and the Public Library, if you would like to review it later. The partner organizations co-sponsoring this forum believe that democracy works best when citizens are informed and active. And we hope that this coffee provides you with the opportunity to learn more about the legislative process and what is happening in our great state of Kansas. So first, we'll begin with each of our legislators telling you about what they've been doing in Topeka, anything that is of particular interest to them, or committee assignments, anything they'd like to share. So we'll start on this end with Representative Pam Curtis.
Can you hear me okay? There we go. So I'll stand up. I'm so short there. Thank you all for having us, and much appreciation to the library and to the League of Women Voters for hosting this opportunity, and appreciate you all taking your time on a Saturday morning to be here. So this year, I'm going to tell you, this year was a little bit different. Leaving session for our first break than what I'm usually accustomed to. I usually leave pissed off, mad, depressed, but this year was different. I left kind of uplifted because honestly, being on the appropriations committee, I was a part of the budget process, and I felt that we really ended up with a good budget. We quite frankly spent a little more than what the governor had recommended, a lot of it in social services, but generally it was a good budget. There was a lot of things in there for Wyandotte County. We have the funding for the KU Cancer. We have money for the SWOP help for the downtown KCK Community College campus. We have World Cup money that will help us host the World Cup. And then I again was able to get $200,000 added for expungement clinics. So that felt good. And then voting on a tax bill that was a historic vote where we had a unanimous vote in the Kansas House, all of us standing up applauding that we came together in a bipartisan way and passed a tax bill that truly gives relief to everybody. It has relief at the property tax, at the sales tax, and with the income tax. Everybody gets a sales tax relief. It's sitting on the governor's desk. It was not exactly what the governor had proposed, but it's a good tax bill. And it was a unanimous vote, so I am really fingers crossed that that bill does get signed. It keeps two rates. It really keeps three rates because if you count the zero rate, you have three rates because there's two on top of that. It eliminates the income tax on Social Security. It accelerates the elimination of food sales tax to July 1. And it gives property tax relief in that it changes the property tax rate that the state charges. So it really does give relief in all of those levels and something that was truly celebrated on the Kansas House floor. So fingers crossed, we have a tax relief bill that everybody can appreciate. So thank you. That was, I think, but my time is up. And so I will pass the mic on to Representative Ruiz.
Thank you, Pam. My name is Louis Ruiz. I served on the 31st District State of Kansas, which is south of the river. I got the Rosedale area, and I come north of the river, and I go west, Archie pick up where Melissa butts up against my district, and then I go south around the old Maple Hill Cemetery and Sacred Heart areas around there. I'm in my 20th session, so I've been here a little bit. And this was a good ending to a not so good session. She gave you all the highlights on the tax and the budget, and you know, it's good. But one of the things is that I've noticed through the years is that these people, and I'm going to speak like a Latino Democrat, because that's what I am. When everybody's patting themselves on the back, and then you come up to other legislation, everybody's cutting each other with a knife. Democrats are left out of conference committees. We have to sign what they call agree, disagree committee reports. That tells you where their loyalties lie. And I got to give it to Dr. Orpeza. You'll hear from her next. She'll get up there and speak truth to power on medical issues. I serve on the Fed State Committee. We deal with abortion. We deal with alcohol. We deal with guns. We deal with most of the main social issues. Immigration. We deal with in-state tuition. Thankfully, last year we haven't had anything really to do with on immigration issues. We had one resolution come up, which was really kind of benign. Resolutions are non-binding, but it was Dan Hawkins, the Speaker of the House. This was a resolution he brought up on a Thursday. It was on the floor the following Tuesday. So that just goes to show you how they want to mimic what's going on at the national level. And we know what's going on at the national level when you have a guy that hopefully goes to prison is calling their shots. So, you know, that's the way it is there. But, you know, we're there to fight the good fight. We in Wyandotte County, we hold strong. We know that we're the super minority. We're hoping the governor signs the tax. And she wasn't happy with it, from my understanding, still on her desk. We'll wait and see if we can go back. Medicaid expansion, I think we're going to be dealing with that right off the bat. I think it's in the Senate right now. It may come back to us. Hopefully, and we can have an up and down vote on the floors. That way, it's an election year, and people who know what's going on in the House and in the Senate know who votes for what. They'll come and speak, you know, a good talk, but watch how they vote, especially you in Johnson County. Watch how your people will vote in Johnson County. We're closely united here in Wyandotte County. But yeah, that's what I tell my Johnson County neighbors, and I'm right there on the county line. So I appreciate you being here this morning. And a lot of us have other places to go after this, but I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm House Representative Dr. Melissa Orpeza, and this is my first term, second session. I will be running again. So I served on elections, health and human services, and legislative modernization were my committees this last session. So we did have a vote in health and human services on Medicaid expansion. All 5 Democrats held strong. We made great arguments to bring that vote to the floor. For whatever, for obvious reasons, it was not brought to the floor, and the Republicans voted it down. So again, numbers matter up at the State House. In order for us to force anybody's hand, we need to be able to make a difference with our numbers. So that's number one. I do appreciate Representative Reese speaking about that. There's quite a few election bills that come through as well to disenfranchise our voters. Which is horrible, and continue to promote these conspiracy theories that have not been validated in any way. Because if one election is fraudulent, then every election is fraudulent. It can't go top down. It has to be throughout the entire system. So, which is one thing they tend to not stress on. So I've had a very interesting time up there. I'm excited that the social worker compact has gone through, the counselors went through last time, our last session. So that's great for mental health in the state of Kansas, that we can get more social workers here and potentially throughout the country to help people here in the state of Kansas. In addition to that, I've just had a great time. Actually, it's been very interesting. I am excited about the tax bill, hard decisions, so we lean on each other to make sure that we're making the right choices for our districts. In addition to the seasoned people I currently serve with, who are very helpful and answer all all my questions. I don't know if they're wonderful, but all my questions. I do appreciate them, and then we'll see what the governor says going forward. But if we need to go back and come back this summer, I'm more than willing to do that, or into the fall, to make sure that we get something where everybody is agreeable, and that we definitely make sure those middle income people are not forgotten with these tax bills. Thank you.
Thank you, as always, for your honesty.
Yes. I just have to give kudos because Melissa, in her first term here, was able to add money to the budget. And that is not easy to do, but in the budget committee that she serves on, she added money for Alzheimer's, knowing that that is, Wyandotte County is highly impacted by that. So we are getting additional dollars due to her effort for Alzheimer's in Wyandotte County.
So we will move on to the question and answer session. I remind you, if you have questions, write them down. Or if you're on Zoom, you can submit it in the chat, and that will be relayed to us. So our first question, what is the status of funding for the Central Avenue Bridge?
Oh, I can answer that.
People say I'm like a dog with a bone on that issue, but the Central Avenue Bridge, we all know downtown, we are isolated, and now they keep closing the James Street Bridge. I'm concerned. So we have K5 closed, we have James Street sometimes closed, we have Central Avenue closed, we have Kansas Avenue closed, we have Mill Street still closed. So Trans Systems, who is a transportation consultant group, have put together the application for the Central Avenue Bridge. It was submitted a month ago. That will start the preliminary design and planning for that. We were able last year, with the help of a pretty good coalition of business people, residents, and people in the historic West Bottoms, able to get the unified government to change their plan to not ever reopen the Central Avenue Bridge, to saying, yes, indeed, it is an essential bridge, and it provides not only workforce access, but if we are going to benefit from the investment that we're making in the Rock Island Bridge of $7.5 million a year, then we need to make sure that those folks, and when the World Cup comes in 2 years and there's all that activity there, we need to make sure that those folks can easily get up to Central Avenue to visit those businesses, to, you know, the downtown area, because I expect that we will continue to see growth there as well. So that's the status of the Central Avenue Bridge, and I plan on keeping it on the front burner. I did meet with Congressman Jake LaTurner 2 weeks ago, and they are trying to push it through at the federal level for us as well. So stay tuned, and please feel free to reach out anytime about the bridge. I'm happy to have as many allies as I can get. Thank you.
So this is a really interesting question. Are there free translation resources available for neighborhood groups?
I'm not aware that there are, but I will tell you that that is one idea that's being tossed around for the World Cup, because the World Cup dollars that have been allocated in that, I think it's $2 million that is set aside for legacy issues, or for legacy projects, which means like a project that we could do that's going to help us be host for the World Cup, but that would live beyond that. So that was one of the ideas that was tossed around at the state was could we have this language program that we could make available to all of our small businesses during the World Cup, you know, anticipating that it's there for that, but it would live beyond that. That would be something. So, I'm not sure, do you all know if there's anything, I'm not sure if there's anything now in place, but I do know that that's something being talked about.
I sit on the education committee and we talk about ESL, LLL, different languages that are in our schools. It would be nice if we could just make the Spanish language a priority, but we know because there's so many different languages out there that are in the our metro area. What we do for one, we can't eliminate and set priorities for others. So that's tough. And El Centro's here. That's something that they, because of the services they do, 100% on the Missouri side, many roads. That's something that people use them as a resource and access for that type of service. But we're willing to help. You know, they come to us, we're willing to see what we can do for as far as funding to help those programs out.
So I will tell you, not to take away from you all, but the library here, we are experimenting with a product called Translate Live. And it is a two-sided device. It's speak to text translation. It's 130 languages. I think right now we're all quite scared of it. And it's not cheap. So we bought one device thinking, let's see how this goes. And if we can make it usable, it comes with, it picks up a lot of background noise. So we bought some phone receivers. So it will be just as if we were standing across the desk from each other, talking to each other on the phone, but it does a really nice job of translation and it covers. And in fact, if you walk up and you pick Spanish, then you can select your country dialect too, which is very helpful for us. So we can keep you posted on how that goes. Okay, what would it take to raise the state minimum wage? And is minimum wage being discussed currently?
Still
Yeah,
on? Okay.
hold it closer to you.
Okay, I was involved when we raised it to 725 years ago. And it's been discussed. It takes a bill to be introduced in committee, and then that bill to be passed out of committee and then brought to the floor and passed out on the floor. We worked for 2 sessions to try and get that 725 minimum wage raised years ago. Our counterparts across the aisle say, we don't like minimum wage. We like not to set a minimum, but you know, we don't want to eliminate the top. So that's their deal. Because there's tips involved, people work for different services and what they can afford. We're always going to have arguments and lobbying against raising the minimum wage when it's a marketable wage and a tolerable wage that most Kansans are looking for. Because right now, minimum wage, $7.25 an hour doesn't do anything for anybody. You know, it's something that we have looked at, but it hasn't been discussed in years.
And we've had bills introduced to try to do that, but the Kansas Chamber is a pretty powerful lobbying effort when it comes to things like the minimum wage or prevailing wage, which the carpenters are here and they know that how important that is. You know, our community, we built all of pretty much Village West prior to the state taking that away from us using prevailing wage. And that keeps those dollars in our community. It means we're hiring local. Those issues are so important, but it's a huge hill to climb in Topeka for that.
So does the amount of money earmarked for special education take away from other students?
Yeah, Valdenia, she's on the K-12 budget, but on the education committee, no, I don't see where it does. I think because we're each funding at risk education, the weighting issues on the funding for students. I think the formulas are going to be the same, so it's not pulling when they say rounding from Peter to St. Paul or vice versa. I think we're in good shape there.
So first, this questionnaire says, thank you for your presence today. Where do you stand on transgender healthcare?
I'll take this one because I did go to the well and speak about this. So for transgender healthcare, it's really about, they put an emphasis on surgery and those types of things. This is not an area that is my area of expertise. However, when I looked into it, first and foremost, it's mental health, it's medication, it's endocrinologist, it's therapist, in addition to psychiatrist, in addition to maybe the person just wants to have a social transition, and all that means is either growing their hair out long, changing colors, wearing nail polish, wearing a dress, wearing pants, whatever makes that person feel comfortable in their body. It does not mean surgery. When I did my research as a healthcare provider with an academic background, that's all it really is. And surgery is not done on children. I know that was made a huge issue as there's some market to do surgery on children. That is not true for transgender children. However, there is a market for rhinoplasty for what you would consider cisgender or heterosexual children. Those type of children do get rhinoplasty, do get breast augmentation for girls, young girls. So for me, the more of the concern would be for young girls who are altering their appearances to feel like they need to meet some sort of a social standard. But as far as a transgender, there's no surgery. They may do puberty blockers, but then in doing that, it's just a stop or a pause. There are always issues or potential concerns with any medication you take. But long-term, there hasn't been seen anything long-term. And then coming off those puberty blockers is always an option. And then, you kind of get people through their transitional periods of their lives. And then they can make a decision when they become adults, or if they even want to make those decisions. It's completely up to having autonomy as a patient.
And we so appreciate having Melissa's expertise in our caucus and being able to explain issues. I think that has been one of, as we have entered into that discussion more and more in the past few years, that the education component of that had been left out, not only for like our communities, but also for us legislators. So a few years ago, sitting there, and I commented to one of my colleagues who this is close to this issue, I said, I don't even understand half of the words that you're using up there at the well. I mean, I'm voting with you, but I don't even understand it myself. So I think that that has been something that in the past year that they have made more of an effort to do, is just to educate. And one thing that was real enlightening to me is that I went to Children's Mercy for a presentation. There was a tour and a presentation from a doctor, a scientist, who talked about gender being on a spectrum. And it's like, it was just a total foreign concept to most of us that were there, most of us legislators. So that, educational component for us being able to better understand, and then having definitely somebody who can actually explain in a better detail. And I know that I am not qualified as a legislator to make that decision. Those decisions need to be between people and their medical professionals and their doctors. So thank you.
And I just may add that, and I agree with both of my colleagues, and we usually vote for health issues to benefit the people in question. And when Pam said that that's between the family, God, and their provider, that's the way we vote for most women's health issues. And that's why we stand together. I just want to add one thing. We're talking about language earlier. And my wife's a psychiatrist. She's Spanish-speaking psychiatrist in Mexico. And she says the best thing you can tell your people, she says, the Mexicanos, the people that speak Spanish, stay away from the telenovelas, because then you get yourself locked in that box.
Hey, we got telenovelas downstairs. So let me add something not on my list. So when I hear you say, medical decisions should be between a person and their healthcare provider, where do we stand with more abortion bills coming down the pipeline?
Those bills come through my committee, Fed and State, and even though last year, was it 22, we voted, state of Kansas voted against the constitutional amendment on abortion, And the women we wanted to keep women's health care with the women, the provider and their families. They want to nitpick, just like the abortion by coercion, notification, a 24-hour before notification, and take you to see an ultrasound and all this. They try to take that decision, still trying to take the decisions away and give it to, I would say, the old white men in this legislature. And those are the ones that want to keep that decision with them. So as long as we stay together and realize what they're trying to accomplish, and it's a national issue, it's not just Kansas, but right now, I don't know how many other states have voted. I think Kentucky voted like the constitutional amendment like we did to vote no on that constitutional amendment to keep the healthcare, women making their own decisions. As I feel that all adults should make their own healthcare decisions. We still fight those bills. And again, we're the super minority, so we have an authority here on healthcare. They have their authorities that speak power to truth, and we speak truth to power. So that's where we're at on abortion. So, they'll be coming up the fight. We don't support.
And we're really lucky that we have the governor that pretty much will veto most of those really egregious ones. And, so far we have been able to sustain for the most part, but that's why it's so important. We need to add our numbers so that we're not a super minority. Just adding a few more seats would change the dynamics totally and allow us to be a bigger part of that dynamic. So.
Thank you. So were there any anti-voting bills this session, and how did you vote?
There were a lot of anti-voting bills. Anytime they can disenfranchise somebody, anytime they can make it harder for people to vote, they are putting those bills forward. It is unbelievable the amount of time and effort that is given to that in the elections committee. And again, they are going from conspiracy theories and making bills and having people who are speaking from these bill mills, and not even in the state of Kansas is a majority of these people who are backing these types of bills to disenfranchise our people here in the state of Kansas. These people are from Florida, Virginia, Michigan. Nobody from the state of Kansas are backing these bills that disenfranchise our voters. So it's to me, the way they get behind this is very unfortunate, because it's not just, it's across the state. So when you disenfranchise people, you disenfranchise them across the state, which I feel is very inappropriate and not a Kansas value. We want to have fair, equally represented people, and especially when you vote. So it's continued, we continue to fight it, we continue to vote against it, and then again, there comes the veto session, and hopefully we'll be able to hold on to those vetoes and keep them from becoming law.
Could you explain veto session?
Veto session is when we have bills that come through the House and come through the Senate. They're approved for both chambers, and then go to the governor's desk. She can strike them, kill the bill, veto it, or sign it into law. She has a choice to either do that or lay on her desk for, I think, 10 days, which automatically will put it into law. And that's what we tried to have her do with the safe and welcoming issue in Wyandotte County a couple of years ago. Not to sign, she didn't want to sign it, and not sign it because she's middle of the road. You saw her commercial, she's middle of the road. So they called me, I said, tell her not to sign it, just let it go into law. That way her signature is not on it. She signed it, so. So that's the veto, her veto power, but then if let's say an abortion bill, or like we've had before, she'll veto it, and then they'll bring it to the floor in both chambers to either override her veto. It takes 2/3 of the vote, and they have that. They have 84, got 125, so they automatically have that. But we've been blessed a couple times to have 2 or 3 Republicans come over to us. We're still fighting because we have 1 Democrat that votes Republican every day. So hopefully we can remedy that this next election cycle. And they want to override her veto. I think we're going to have a couple of issues come across the veto session to be overridden, in the next week or so. And on the election, I don't know if you saw Scott Schwab. He's our Secretary of State. He was on some show Sunday, last Sunday. And he's been contending that Kansas has the most secure election system in the country, one of the most. No fraud, no this, but yet they'll push these bills just because they want to do a national trend for the audience of one. That's the way they're operating. So anyway, I can get on the soapbox, but I won't be there.
Can I explain just a little more on veto session? So it's usually about, we anticipate it's gonna be a week this year, sometimes it's longer, sometimes it's shorter. But we go back on the 25th, anticipate being done by May 1st. The appropriations committee goes back a day early. And what we put together is called the omnibus appropriations bill, which is all the stuff that we didn't deal with or we pushed to after what is called the consensus revenue estimates. That's where a group gets together and forecast what our outlook is for the next year. That happened this past week, and our forecast is very positive and growing. So, I mean, they came out, they said that inflation is expected to be steady or decline, states' receipts and economy are stable, jobs are increasing, states' gross domestic product is expected to rise. So hopefully that gives the governor confidence to sign our tax bill. So we put that together. This year, we also left for the veto session, school funding. So when we go back, we're going to be dealing with putting together an omnibus appropriations bill and the school funding bill. So, and they throw in, like Lewis said, anything that's been discussed or on the table could come up.
So, where do you stand in support of Medicaid expansion?
We're all for it.
I can take that one.
I voted for it.
I can, since I'm new, I'm gonna take the easy question. We're all for it. If we can get a vote to the floor, I more than believe that we have help on the opposite side as well to be all for it and have it passed. It is a leadership position that they are not allowing it to go to the floor. And so that is, we obviously I can see it as a benefit from a healthcare provider perspective. I mean, people in the community, people in rural Kansas can see it as a benefit for their local hospitals, for the people they know that could benefit from it, from having insurance or having that type of care and preventative care to keep people out of hospitals. So across the state, I feel very confident in saying that everybody supports it, everybody wants it. As a state, the numbers have been run with the new kind of bonuses that the federal government would be giving. We wouldn't even have to worry about paying for it for at least 8 to 10 years, which is always nice that you have some time to figure out how to sustain it going long term instead of just like all of a sudden you have to do it in 1 to 2 years. So even having that type of a financial cushion is always very nice to come up with a very long-term sustainable plan for the state.
As an alternative to Medicaid expansion, what we did this year is we started increasing provider fees using state general fund dollars. So it's so frustrating because it's like, you know, you're looking at that, okay, yes, that's a good idea, we should do that, but this could be paid by the federal government if we would just approve Medicaid expansion. So that is the frustrating thing in that we see our federal dollars not coming back to us, but going to help people in other states.
And follow along both of my colleagues. Billions of dollars have been left on the table by the state of Kansas, and there's 2 people. I mean, you can have all the rallies you want. Just walk up the stairs, go downstairs on your knees for Medicaid expansion. Dan Hawkins in the House and Ty Master in the Senate blocked those bills from coming to the floor.
Why?
That's a good question. You may have to ask them why. We don't, and I can tell you my reason why. Why I think, because the ACA started under Barack Obama. So Medicaid expansion, ACA kind of fits along those lines. And the way I look at it, being a minority male, is because a minority male administration brought this to fruition. And it's sad, that's the way people think, but it's a fact.
So let's switch gears here. When will there be a remedy for the food desert in the northeast area beyond the Merck?
That's more of probably a local government issue than a state government issue. I'm trying to think of what role we would play in helping other than just as individuals helping to, I mean, I live downtown. This is my district. And so I shop at the Merck. and at Sunfresh and yeah, we need more grocery stores, particularly north of us. That is indeed, a food desert, so, I'm open for any ideas on how I can help.
Appreciate that. Is there a plan to change the writing of House Bill 2350? Gosh, is there an update on that bill?
What is it?
Somebody, help us with what.
Oh, I know what 2350 is. Yeah. Yeah, I have not heard of, that was the trafficking bill. So, yeah, I have not heard of any rewriting of it. I haven't heard of, any rewording of it. I would like to think if the election goes a certain way this fall, maybe we could make strides on that. At least from my perspective, and I'm new, I think anything that we would do to help change that or make it a little more palatable, would be met with opposition or wouldn't be heard at all. And House Bill 2350 was a trafficking bill, and it was, you could potentially go to jail or, if you were driving people around who were in the midst of a crime or undocumented, that's a kind of a summary of the bill. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what I remember.
And one of the things that we learned in Kansas is that our Republican Party wants to mimic what Texas does. They have that type of situation there. We tried to get a trailer bill established. I had local government come to me. What can you do? I said, well, get your people together, your law groups together, come up with something we can work together with my revisers and come to my committee, because that's what those bills come to, Penn State. And so we can do a trailer bill to eliminate some of the unforeseen circumstances that may happen, and it's happening in some parts of the state. Wyandotte County, we had a meeting with the chief of police, the mayor's office, sheriff's office. They said, we're just going to run, and the DA. And said, we're just going to run business as usual. We're not going to stop anybody because they look a certain way. And then the DA said, well, it's up to me to prosecute. I'm not going to prosecute anybody that looks a certain way. And we almost had the bill come up from Texas that if you look alien, we can stop you and arrest you. That's had to take until one of their Supreme Court people said, no, that's unconstitutional. We almost brought that, and I'll give you a name, Senator Karen Tyson. She's a tax chair, wanted to bring that bill out on the floor to the Senate and come to the House, but it died. So we're thankful for that.
Speaking of people from other states, please explain how people from Florida and other states can come and speak and influence Kansas law. And do you know who is funding it?
I think that's probably referring to, like, we have seen a rash of like organizations that we call bill mills, like they have these model bills and then they just will go around and shop them from state to state. And now you're just seeing that kind of industry even grow more, where you'll have just, you know, an organization that's just really single focused on, like, that was kind of the way the bill came to us at first about age verification for for pornography.
Are you a service dog?
So cute.
He just wants to read a book.
So, I mean, anybody can literally participate in that process. I mean, it does take some following the calendar and knowing the rules and knowing, you know, when to sign up to testify, but anybody can really do that. And some of those folks are just funded by organizations and they've become very aggressive about putting these bills that they say, oh, now it's past, you know, 11th state, so Kansas needs to get on board. It's, you know, that happens a lot. So I'm thinking that that's perhaps where that question is.
And a lot of those bills come from, the Republicans have a national meeting that they go to ALEC, American Legislative Exchange. And that's a bill mill from the National Republican, they all get together. So that's why bills go from state to state. Those are funded by the Americans for Prosperity. And there's a lot of money that goes into ALEC. You know, we have UPS, we have NRA puts a lot of money into ALEC because they all want their legislation to go state to state. That's who funds, and they'll send speakers. We've had the convention of states come in to my committee. They brought in Rick Santorum, they brought in the gentleman senator from Oklahoma to come speak, trying to change the way Congress works and bring in the Commission of States. And those are well funded. There's a lot of people that want those to happen, but we still fight those.
I'm gonna add just a few things, so, since I brought up the bill mills. So that's just what I see from my perspective, being a new, first term, legislator. In addition to that, it's interesting because leadership makes the decision on what bills are heard in the committee. There are, I'm sure, meetings, somewhere that this happens of what is the, agenda gonna be for the session. So the, in addition to that, it's very interesting that we actually have legislators that cannot, get their bills heard. So,
Those of you online, a dog has.
yeah,
joined our
very
meeting.
cute dog.
I don't know if he has a question, we'll find out. I'm sorry.
No. I think Representative Reese is gonna take that dog home, so he'll
Yeah,
like
I can
to
catch him, put him on the
capture
ground.
him and we can put him on his lap and he can stay with them.
Catch it really.
Yeah. So.
I'll take you, though. I'm ready, I have the moment.
I'll finish my answer really quick.
I take that for 3 minutes.
Yeah.
I think we've given up on time, Dee Dee.
Yeah. So, just a real quick point. So with the bill mills, obviously those things are put forward and those decisions are made by leadership. But in addition to that, we actually have legislators who want to do the right thing for the state of Kansas. We had a representative, Featherstone, who had a bill specifically for breast cancer. For state employees, ensuring that, the subsequent, mammograms, ultrasounds, whatever needed to happen after you had diagnosed with breast cancer was covered by insurance and wasn't applied to the deductible, which I feel like is very reasonable. You have a history. People, when they have cancer, unfortunately lose their jobs, have to, things are very hectic during that time and very expensive. So to have subsequent follow-up, health maintenance to ensure cancer hasn't come back, I feel shouldn't be applied to deductibles and should be some type of an okay for that person to be. And this affects not only women, but also males. That bill was not heard. And that bill came from a representative who, in the state of Kansas, who had a personal experience and it was not heard. But yet people from outside of the state and national narratives are heard on the regular in Topeka. And those are the questions we need to start asking people when they're running. Who is first and foremost at your thoughts? Is it the party line or the state of Kansas?
And if I just may add something too, we get a lot of emails from people that say, well, from your constituent, they'll give Republican talking points, but they don't give us an address or whose district or anything. That's why I asked this young man, if he gets calls in or somebody on the chat line, find out where they're from. Find out if they're actual Kansas residents. Rule of thumb is, if they don't vote for you, they don't live in the state. And they can't help you, but they can hurt you. So that's,
Thank you. So it would be wonderful to have an online website which boils down legislative bills and proposals to 2 or 3 readable sentences and list which way each elected official voted. Can you make that happen?
I know that we are getting some upgrades to our legislative page and bill tracking. They tried to make some improvements, but it's still pretty clunky and hard to follow. I follow it a lot, so I kind of know how to navigate. But yes, so LAS, they have put out an RFP. They are working through that. We're gonna have a new constituent management program for legislators as well. So hopefully, yes, there's gonna be some new improvements on how to track all of that.
So what issues did you hear about from your constituents the most this session?
Well, I do a survey every year. So, it was overwhelmingly 80% number one issue, property tax reduction. Overwhelmingly. And then, to follow that, it was, infrastructure in downtown area. Loose dogs continues to be one of the things that pops up, and I guess we just experienced that firsthand. Yeah. And so, yeah, so property taxes is huge. I mean, tax reduction, people are really feeling that. And then just wanting infrastructure improvements. When you dive into that, it's pretty much accessibility and deals more with like being able to navigate in public transportation.
In my district, it's, they want Medicaid expansion, of course, in K medical centers in my district, so it'll be more access and they can service more people without getting into their big budgets. So there's a lot of money that they, for engineering healthcare that comes out of K medical center. Education is always a factor. They want education before we fund it. So right now, we're doing okay on education, but sad that our K-12 budget, our ranking member getting banking. You know, guns. We have got still a lot of gun violence around, cartel issues, and come through I-35, and you see this activity here off Central Avenue. We're dealing with some of those issues. The property taxes, again, your house, your homeowners taxes, it always raises. My house payment went up $200 a month out there when he was paying the property taxes. But people got to realize the state's not the only one that can raise your property taxes. School boards, library boards, junior colleges, local government, state. But the state, we can try and level them off. But in Wyandotte County, USD 500 just had an initiative for new schools, so it's going to pay for that. We just had Dr. Stubblefield give us a talk on that this morning on our breakfast. So we have to be aware that not everybody's aware because we always get the blame for it. But you have to be aware that there's other entities that can raise your local taxes, your LOBs and other middlemen.
I've heard the same thing. Property taxes are huge in my area as well as Medicaid expansion. I think I hear more about election issues because I sit on that committee. So I've heard a lot from people about the election issues and those disenfranchising bills.
And I would say my number 3 issue that came in after property tax reduction and infrastructure, it was approve marijuana so it can pay for it. And that was like overwhelmingly as well. That was near the same number as my property tax number.
So why are land bank opportunities getting harder?
Land bank is really a local unified government responsibility. So, and I know we have, having spent some time in local government, know that we have, a huge amount of land bank property, and we need to get that back on the tax rolls because that would help with our number 1 issue as well, which is taxes.
They are revisiting policy right now.
Okay.
So this is probably a great way to wrap up. What are your best tips for how to voice concerns to a representative?
So for me, I would say, voicing concerns, email, I have 2 emails, one for my campaign and then one for the state legislature. But again, they're both on my phone. So, but please include your address so I know you're in my district. So then that way, when I take the time to sit down and reply to everybody, I know they're truly my constituents because I know not everything that I vote for is okay with every person in my district, but at least I understand that and I can say this is the reason why and this is my rationale. And even if we don't agree, we can at least have a conversation about it or an email about it. But that for me is the best and most effective way.
And I'm going to add to that. If you want to contact your representative, know who they are. We're all accessible online. Go and see what district you live in. And you can query it down to your address. Know what issues you want to talk about. And all our voting records are online too. If you're asking about the bills, you can look at, sometimes those bills are 60, 70 pages long, or could be longer. And then at the end of the session, they add more bills to them, so they bundle the bills. So they're not always, well, the way they're introduced, and they come out with a different bill number. But you can track the history on each bill. And on our voting records, Google us or look on the online website. I'd like to know how many people have visited the legislative website of state of Kansas. Good, that's good to know. You should. And then when you look up the representative or senator in your district, know how they vote on issues. That way you can have educate yourself on the bill and then converse how you want to address that. If we vote for it, thank you. We very seldom get thank yous. It's mostly, you should have, could have, would have, you know, so that's something that we like to hear more from our constituents, but that's the way they can track us, track our voting records and look at the bills and know what they're all about and bring up the secret. There's also summary pages. When you look up the bill, there's summary pages on those bills that gives you a pretty good transcript of what the bill's about and the results.
I'd say for me, contacting me, I used to say email, but my email just gets like overwhelmed and buried, and sometimes it takes me days to bury out and bury. So if I don't respond to you, if you've sent me an email, please just try again, because it just, I have 3 emails. So anyway, I want to give a shout out too, because I also work at the Greater Kansas City Chamber, and thank goodness for Joe Reardon for keeping me employed so that I'm able to continue doing my legislative job. So I could, on off session, I can be reached there, or, you know, via my contact information on my legislative page. I also have, you know, social media. I try to keep up with that. Sometimes I'll get behind there as well as responding to messages. The best way to find me is my husband and I own an old gas station in the St. Peter's neighborhood at 14th and 14th and Grandview across from St. Peter's. And we host a Friday coffee every Friday. Most Fridays I'm there, except sometimes during session I'll get caught in Topeka. But if you ever want to track me down, that is the best way to find me. And the best place to find me is there at our little gas station on Friday morning. Sometimes I'm there on Saturday because he has kids. In fact, today we're hosting the neighborhood cleanup at our gas station. So sometimes we'll have a bunch of people there on Saturday as well. So anyway, just reach out, and if I don't respond, just try another way and keep trying, because it's not personal. It's just I get overwhelmed.
And come visit.
Okay, so obviously I know the question. But Valdina Nguyen, Representative Valdina Nguyen, and thank you for being patient. I asked these two to share with you that another forum, so it's over now. What?
You have to fill that in on paper, because we were not able
Okay.
to do that. So if you could take a few minutes.
Nightmare. Nightmare. Okay, so we do have an agreement. And it was after very, very contentious negotiation on our side, and the Senate just straight out killed it. So that forced us back to the table. So we negotiated this education bill midnight on whatever the last day we were there. It does have, let's see, what was the component that was the deal breaker? The component that was the deal breaker was taking your tax dollar, your local tax dollar, that you access the local option budget for special ed, and let the state count it as its contribution. We in state law says the state will essentially pay up to 92% of special ed. This little goofy math idea was to take your money and say the state owns it. And that was a deal breaker. And especially a deal breaker for the rural schools and the small schools. I mean, we have KCK is one of the largest, and it's not that large, actually. It has 22,000 students. Your growth is DeSoto, Olathe. Wichita has 50,000 students. But we have students with districts that have 200. And so when you start saying, I'm going to take your local tax dollar that you then devote to pay for above and beyond your general commitment, you can't, the state can't claim that. The state has an obligation. So then the argument is that the state says, well, the federal government do what they want to do. We don't control the federal government. Okay, so that was the deal breaker. That's off the table. There is 75 million new dollars for special ed. That was a win. The other parts are not bad. There is a accountability plan. Now here it got a little goofy too. There was a provision that in every school district has at-risk dollars. At-risk dollars are for students who are not on grade level, who are not graduating, who are homeless, who are foster children, so who the dyslexia. So there's an expanded list of students who are eligible for at-risk services. You know, you get money, district gets money for at-risk students based on poverty. So if you have certain percentage poverty, that's how you, and I hate this phrase, how you trigger the money. But your responsibility is to provide services, programs, evidence-based programs. That could be, a kid could be a millionaire, but still not at grade level, things like that. And they're eligible for at-risk services. So this provision, that was also a mini deal breaker. At-risk services money, as well as high-density money, was to be captured. And if the kids didn't perform after 4 years, you're no longer eligible for any money. Now, District 500 has $59 million worth of at-risk and high-density money. So you take that out of the budget. You finish my sentence, but don't say it out loud. So the deal then said, all right, we won't do that, but, and you have to accept this. At-risk services, districts will have an accountability plan. How to get the students up to proficiency, logical, but not overnight. You cannot snap your fingers and you go from 1 to a 4 for proficiency. So there was that provision. Also with the SPED money that you access from local option budget, you must put it into your SPED fund, your special education fund. Makes sense. And so we finished it around 2 a.m. And there wasn't enough time then for staff to type it, file it. So it is laying over till time we come back. And there is a meeting on Wednesday for the area legislators to discuss this, because with more eyes on a bill, you may see some gaps. And so at 2 a.m., I was awake and I was alert, but I still could have missed. What do I do then?
Would you like to update the crowd on what you've been doing this session besides?
That's all I do. I have the honor of serving as assistant minority leader. And so I fight to stay on K-12 because it is so important for the state. You know, I am 100% quality education for all our students and all of our students. I don't care if you live in Hillsdale, Kansas, where that is. But the policy should be equal to everybody. And so that's all I do. From sun up to sunset, and y'all ask my husband, I'm like, you know what they did this afternoon? And he's like, okay. Now, are you ready to come off the ledge? Sometimes Pam sits in front of me, behind me. Yeah. So I didn't even know where she sits. And I'm like, I gotta get off the edge. But it's so, first of all, I'm an educator, and so I'm selfish, saying, I want the students, when you get to community college, to be college ready. Okay, even if you go to Tech Center, you still have to be able to give that welding bill to your customer. And so writing is still important. Maybe don't like history, but still, an education, a basic education, those skills, 21st century skills, computers. I mean, you know, you can use your phone a lot better than I can, but still, I do education.
What is the best way for constituents to get in contact with you?
I'm everywhere. Like they said, I have the email from the state that we have on our phone. So there's no reason why you can't get me there. I teach at the college. I've been there 50 years. And so, and yeah, I know what that is. And that is, since that is a state institution, you can call and send me an email there. I'm on the school board, so every Tuesday, every second and fourth Tuesday, I'm at the school district, and there's an email there. And then I work in the community. I am a member of Strugglers Hill Neighborhood Group, so every first Thursday, I'm at our neighborhood group. I'm just every place.
She did answer my email at 2 AM the other day. I didn't realize you were still working then. I thought you were just up. I would just like to say thank you. These are some hardworking people right here. And I live and work here, and I appreciate your willingness to come and stand in front of people and answer for what's going on and how you voted, and we really appreciate that. And the library really appreciates our partner, the League of Women Voters. Enjoy some coffee and muffins from my favorite neighbor, the Kinship Cafe, 6 and Ann. That is complimentary from them. And if you have other questions for the library, then you can let me know, or as they just told you how to contact them, if you have more issues, feel free to contact them. But anyway, thank you for coming on a Saturday. Dr. Wynn, do you have anything else to add?
Just like I think Representative Reese, come visit us. It's nice to see friendly faces. Because we're always kind of the brown faces.
Yes.
This is our resident.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, if I could get somebody to volunteer to be the photographer, you all stay there and we're coming there.
She is bossy. It's me.
Get that puppy.
I'm gonna say, go grab the.
Put the puppy in
Sorry.
here.
You guys get. All right, you guys are over here. We're coming here. Yeah. We're coming with you. That's all right.
How much more?
Everybody act like you like each other.
Like I did in front here.
I'm gonna take 2. Perfect.
Yeah.
It's up there. Dr. Wynn, for the first time ever, we had a dog
It's
join.
right there.
You did not ask a question.
All right. Why did Laura get here?
I wonder. Picture right. 1, 2, 3.
Oh,
There.
What do you have to say?
All right.
Good job.
Go grab that house. Do the rest of your thing.
So is this like an owl? It picks up, does it point the camera at whoever's talking?